The next day, Alan found the express engine in the yard, simmering quietly, and Tavish was introducing himself. "Good morning," Tavish said, and the engine replied in kind. "I'm Tavish, and that was some run you did yesterday." "Thank you," the engine said, smiling. "My name is Scott. It's a pleasure to meet you. I suppose you'll have heard of me." Alan and Tavish exchanged glances. Scott looked from one to the other. "You know, Scott," he said. 4472? London to Edinburgh non-stop? First authenticated 100 miles per hour top speed?" Again, Alan and Tavish exchanged glances, and said nothing. Scott was not impressed. "Where have you been for the last 30 years, he complained. "I'm probably the most famous steam locomotive of all time." "You mean like City of Truro?" Alan said, remembering Sir Ralph's comments at the time of the Fair Maid competition. Scott was speechless. "You know of City of Truro?" he said, bewildered. But not of me?" "I'm sorry," Alan said, and Tavish mumbled the same. Scott sighed. Post-war British railways hadn't had quite the same glamour that the old London and North Eastern Railway had had. He should have known. They'd know about the Flying Scotsman. Oh yes, the Top-End Express, that famous train that came out of King's Cross Station. But the engine that pulled it? Forgotten. A relic. And he felt somewhat saddened. "Well, tell us about yourself then," Alan said. "I'm all ears." "Look, I hate when someone says I'm all ears," Tavish grunted. "You're clearly all metal." Alan shushed him and asked Scott to continue. Scott was delighted and began by telling the two engines all about the glory days, the Empire exhibition at Wembley in 1924, the 100 mile per hour run, the non-stop runs with the corridor tender, the war years. Finally, after what seemed like an age to Alan and Tavish, Scott finished with an observation. "What a fine yard you have here." "Look, I've only been here a few months," Tavish replied, "but aye, it's nice enough. The engines here are good company." "I'll second that," Alan said. "Ah, yes," Scott said with a smile. "Pray tell, what are the names of the engines who work here?" "Look," Tavish said, "we have Stephen, the old gent. Wee Nigel, of course, and there be Herbert, the V2. George, one of those Pacifics like yourself, Sir Ralph." "Sir Ralph Wedgwood?" Scott interrupted. "Aye," Tavish replied. Scott looked perplexed. "A good friend of mine was lost to a German bomb during the war," he said. "His name was Sir Ralph Wedgwood. It couldn't be him working here." Alan gave Scott a strange look. "There is a Sir Ralph working here at this yard," he said, and Scott snorted. "Don't be silly, Alan. Didn't I just tell you? Look, he does work here. There he is now." Scott looked across the yard and was astonished to see a blue A4 Pacific backing down towards them. "Morning, Sir Ralph," Alan said, and Sir Ralph replied haughtily, "Morning, young Alan. Lovely day." "Sir Ralph, this is Scott. He says he knows you." But Sir Ralph took one look at Scott, screeched to a halt, and puffed away quickly. Tavish raised an eyebrow. "What?" he said, staring after the blue A4. "Was that about?" Scott was looking very thoughtful. "I wonder. It did look like Sir Ralph," he said. "I mean, it was an A4, but no, it couldn't be. Could it?" That lunchtime, Scott was waiting with the local stopping train when Sir Ralph approached from the junction with his express. He saw Scott, who whistled hello, and he accelerated away without a word. Scott was amused by this turn of events, and puffed away. That evening, Sir Ralph was waiting in the shed alone, when Scott backed down next to him. "Can't escape me now, Sir Ralph," Scott mused, as the A4 looked round for his driver. "But your secret's safe with me, for the moment at least. I thought you might like to know that." The A4 stayed quiet for a while. "Thank you," he said, finally. "That's all right," Scott chortled. "But no red herrings for them, the other engines. Or should I say, herring gulls?" And he puffed out of the yard, leaving Sir Ralph looking very worried. But what was Sir Ralph worried about? And what was Scott talking about? I'm afraid for you and I, that's another story. But for Sir Ralph Wedgwood, his story is just beginning.